Hello there, everybody. Good evening and welcome to our latest Zoom presentation. My name's Phil and I am your host for this evening. I'm just going to give a few moments to let everybody trickle into the Zoom session, and then we'll start properly. I would be grateful if somebody could just drop a message on chat to reassure me that I'm not speaking to myself and you can in fact hear me. That would be very kind. Thank you very much. I noticed we've got some regular clients and viewers on the presentation tonight. So Greta, I saw that you were joining. Lovely. It's lovely to have you on the call. Tony, hello as well. And Kit, I saw you as well. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you are well. Plenty of people saying they can hear me. Thank you very much. That's good. As well as some repeat customers and clients. There's loads and loads of new names I don't recognize on the call this evening. So thank you very much for all those who haven't joined our one of our sessions. And we hope you enjoy it this evening. Okay, that's probably enough time for people to come in. I can see plenty of people that have joined the call now. So I'll start properly. For those that missed the beginning, my name's Phil and I'm your host for this evening. We are going to be transporting you to the Indian Ocean this evening and taking a deep dive into the Maldives. And we're very lucky this evening to have Bernie McAteer from Emperor Divers Maldives, who is over in the UK at the moment and is our expert for the evening. Good evening, Bernie, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. How are you coping with the autumn chill being over here?
Yeah, it's a bit chilly than I'm used to, but it's okay, not too bad.
You're managing, very good. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Before we hand over to Bernie, I'll just run through a little bit of housekeeping for those that haven't joined our calls before or our presentations before. This call is being recorded is the first thing to mention. So it's a webinar, so only myself and Bernie are visible, but you have to be comfortable with that, and it will go online after the call. We also have a Q&A and a chat. Once we've finished the presentation, then we'll hand over to a Q&A session. So if you've got any questions, then please pop them on the chat or on the Q&A, and once we've finished presenting, then we will do our best to answer all of the questions. There will also be a poll, so at some point a poll will pop up on your screen. If you are able to answer that, that would be great. And I think that's everything. So without further ado, Bernie, I'll hand over to you for you to tell us how to distinguish between our islands and our atolls and our Thilas and our Giris. So we will pass over to you.
Okay. Hopefully that's working. Is that working for you, Phil? Can you see it already?
I can see your screen. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, guys, so thank you for having me. Thank you again to Phil. The description of expert might play out. Let's see how we go with that. But basically, I'm over in the UK. I've been in the Maldives now for 7 years. So I'll try to give you as much information as I can about the Maldives and then just talk through a few pointers that you might like to know. And like Phil said at the end, we can answer any questions. So anything I do miss during the presentation, then please just ask and I'll see if I can answer those for you. So just as you can see there on the world map, located in the Indian Ocean, the Maldives, they're about 400 nautical miles southwest of the Asian mainland. And actually the equator runs through the Maldives. So just started with a few facts here that you might like to know. So they're made up of 26 atolls with 1,200 islands, but only 200 islands are actually locally inhabited. One of my favorite facts here actually is the fourth one down. It's the Maldives are 35,000 square miles, but only 115 square miles are land. So you can see it really is a nation of the ocean, and that's why it's so great for us divers. And the next one there, maybe you've not seen before. So with the average sea level is 1.5 meters above sea level. The country is actually the lowest elevation of any country in the world. Traditionally, the Maldives was a fishing nation, also trading. And then in the 70s, with the emergence of tourism, so then basically what became their number one dependency was, economy was dependent on fishing. It then became fully dependent now on tourism. And as you can see at the bottom, it close to 2 million tourists per year. So moving on, just got to the map of the Maldives here. So just on the left there, you can see the Maldives map. And actually once upon a time, millions of years ago, it was actually an active volcano range. And then what happened over millions of years, the volcanoes went extinct and then they started to subside. And then they formed these atolls, which we see now. So just on the right side there, you can see that satellite image. That's of Ari Atoll. So what you'll see there is on the outside of the atoll, that would have been actually the edge of the volcano where it subsided in. So on the open ocean side, you have deep water. And then in the middle, where it's all subsided, you have a sandy bottom. So the whole range there, as you would have seen, would have been volcanoes once upon a time, which is quite cool to think about. And this is what it looks like now. So typically, if you're looking at the top left, that would be a typical resort in the Maldives. You see a small sandbank with a slightly extended water bungalows on the top and the bottom. To the right side, you've got uninhabited island. There's actually very few of those left now. And then bottom left here, again, this is looking at a fringing reef. So to the left of the bottom left photo, that is open ocean. And then to the right, then that goes inside the atolls. So that's just how the atolls are made. And then the sandbanks, the bottom right, beautiful to spend some hours on. And there's a few of those located in the different atolls. Just skipping on one more. So again, I just wanted to go back to this about the volcanoes side of things, because this actually makes up a large portion of the diving and how the diving differs dramatically. So this island here is forming the outside of an atoll. So to the left, you see a shallow reef, and then it drops off deep blue water, hundreds of meters. To the right, inside the atoll, then much shallower sandy bottom lagoon here, you can just see with the boat moored in there. And then inside the atoll, go into about 40, maybe 50 meters at the maximum depths in there. And this again is just how that's made up. So on the outside here, you could have seen what once would have been the volcano, the mountain side here, going down deep ocean. And then as they've subsided and the corals have built up, you've got the reef flat just here. And then moving on the inside, you've got the island into a lagoon. And then inside the atolls is where we get the Thilas and Giris. I'll come to those a little bit later, but that's just basically how the atolls are made up. So it's pretty amazing to think what they were. Climate, obviously always a big question of how is the weather. So it is a tropical climate, and we have two distinct monsoons. We have rain season and we have dry season. Okay, so dry season is typically from mid-December to early May, and rain season is from sort of early May till mid-December. It's not as fixed as it once was, so it does change a little bit, but all year round, because it's tropical, you will get rainstorms. So predominantly sunny with storms blowing through, but obviously in the rain season, there is more of the rainstorms blowing through. It's not very common that you would get rain for weeks on end, but it's normally on the day you might get showers and downpours and then back to sunny weather again. Diving is affected by the monsoons because the season changes some of the marine life, but in both seasons you can have great diving, and I'll also come back to that shortly. This is obviously maybe the most important part. What can you see? So the Maldives is blessed with lots of pelagic life. I would say the coral life is not as good as it can be in some places, but the marine life is fantastic. And the pelagics, obviously sharks, mantas, rays, we have huge numbers of those. So that's really great for divers. So mantas, this is normally number one on the list of what people want to see. And again, we're very lucky that we've got resident reef mantas in the Maldives. They do migrate. So this is what I was meaning about the seasons. So Currently, we're in rain season, so we see mantas on the east side of some of the atolls. When we're in dry season, we see them on the west side of some of the atolls. So it's very important to just bear in mind where you're going, what time you're going, and the best possible chance to see mantas if that's something you want to see. They're incredible animals. If we see them on cleaning stations, you can get them very close, flybys just over the top of your head. It's kind of a mesmerizing experience I always find when I see manta rays. So yeah, incredible creatures, largest brain of any fish, and yeah, very, very intelligent. So I mentioned we see them on cleaning stations mostly. I've got a short video here that I can show you that maybe just explains how we can sometimes see them. Hopefully this works for you guys. So this video was shot maybe 3 weeks ago at a cleaning station in North Wales. Basically what happens on a daily basis, the mantas come to cleaning stations to remove parasites, to general cleaning, and also to repair wounds. So clean the wrasse on the cleaning station will clean the mantas of all of these things, then repair or heal their wounds. You can also see courtship at times as well. And this particular dive, we were very, very lucky that we had these schooling mobula rays. These are not so common. They're a smaller ray, not as big as the manta. There's a large stall of these rays that gets a little closer. So it might be nice. This was the second of the trip, so we set the bar quite high with this one. Yeah, incredible.
Bernie, how many mantas did you think there were on that dive?
So the mantas on the cleaning station was more than 12. These which are a much smaller ray, these ones are about a meter. Even in the video, I've stopped it a few times. There's something between 50 or 60.
50 or 60, wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, amazing. Hope you managed to watch that and that was clear enough. Okay, so just moving on. So as I mentioned, pelagics, they are a big part of the Maldives, and we're very lucky with the population of sharks and also the types of sharks. So these four here, I put these up because these sharks you'll see very easily in the Maldives. So the top left is a white-tip reef shark, and you'll see this pretty much on every dive. It's embarrassing in a way. We kind of ignore these sharks. They're not the most dynamic looking shark, and they sit in the sand. So yeah, we kind of just ignore them as a sort of a big goby half the time, but it's a bit mean for them, but it's certainly very, very easy to see in the Maldives. Moving across the top right, the black-tip reef shark. This is a beautiful shark. You typically see these in shallow waters. So if you're on a Giri or if you're on a house reef, these are normally in 1 to 3 meters of water. So yeah, very beautiful shark that is also commonly seen. Bottom left coming down is a grey reef shark. Big populations of these grey reef sharks in the Maldives. So we see them on lots of the tillers, lots of the channels. Yeah, dynamic sharks. And then the bottom right, this is nurse shark we find in the Maldives. There's a couple of famous dives. And these are quite funny sharks also. They sit in the sand, they yawn, they roll. They're kind of a bit like big puppy dogs, really. But yeah, very nice to see. So those four sharks are very easily seen on lots of the dives. We do have other sharks. We can get tiger sharks, bull sharks, guitar sharks. But these generally certain seasons and more in the deep south, especially the tigers and the bulls and even hammerheads. So those types of sharks you don't normally see. It's only in certain seasons and really more so in the deep south of the Maldives. So I just focused on these four for the moment. And then of course this is always one that's very high on the list of people. So the whale sharks are the biggest fish in the world. We do have them in the Maldives. There is again residents in the south of Ari Atoll. And the scientists believe they come there to warm. Actually, they're all juvenile males that we find there. So never find females there, and generally only juvenile males up in the shallow areas. This shot here is actually, there's an area where you can moor a boat and put the lights out, and occasionally you get lucky and they come and feed in the plankton at the back of the boat. So yeah, this was a very lucky night. You can see in the back there was a second one there. So again, incredible to see. But very specific to certain atolls in the Maldives. So again, you don't see those everywhere. Then the reef fish, lots of beautiful reef fish in the Maldives. Schooling fish, so the top right, I just want to mention that one, that's a blue line snapper. That's actually an iconic fish in the Maldives. So very well known. There's lots of tillers with thousands and thousands of these on, where you can go in amongst them and dive, become one of the blue line snappers if you want to. Just incredible. Your buddy might be 1 meter away and you can't see them because there's so many blue line snappers in the way. So yeah, lots of the tillers with those schooling fish, also the oriental sweet lips on the bottom left. Top right, so angelfish, but also butterfly fish, Nemo fish. So lots of schooling fish and reef fish around. Other things you might like to see, moray eels. So lots of different moray eels. So you get the giant morays, white mouth, yellow mouth, black cheek, lots and lots of different morays to find on the reefs. And also these beautiful peacock mantis shrimp on the right side there. Very interesting creatures with these amazing eyes. I don't know if you guys have seen them, but I absolutely love those as well. And macro. So this is something the Maldives is not really known for, because obviously we're always so busy staring at mantas or staring at sharks or whatever, or swimming up to the mobula rays. People kind of ignore the macro life. But if you're on a dive site with less current and you like macro, there is plenty macro to see. So all these shots are from the Maldives as well. So you can see various different nudies, crabs and shrimps, frogfish, yeah, all manner of macro. But you just need to be looking at those rather than looking at the mantas, and that's kind of difficult sometimes. But yeah, there is macro for those macro lovers out there. And then this is the question. So liveaboard or island? So I just want to give you a bit of information about the options if you do go to an island, and obviously the liveaboard as well, just to explain. So in the Maldives, there's more than 160 resorts, I think it is now, and they cater for all budgets. You also have more and more local guest houses. So on some of the local islands, there's guest houses as well. These you would travel into Mali Airport, and then via a speedboat or seaplane or a domestic flight, you would then transfer to either resort or local island. I think these provide beautiful scenic holidays. Obviously, you can see with the Maldives, it's stunning scenery. And then access to the local dive sites around that island. They generally also have house reef dives for you. And I would say it's a more relaxed holiday. So, you know, maybe doing 1, maybe 2 dives a day. Obviously, you're only around certain dive sites around where you are. So yeah, maybe not as much diving. The one thing I would really stress about if you did a guest house or a resort is you really need to study the season and the location, because the different atolls in the Maldives, they don't all have the same marine life. So for example, if you wanted to see manta rays and you went to South Mali Atoll, let's say, you won't see manta rays because South Mali doesn't have manta rays. So what you would need to do is look which atoll would have manta rays, and then also which season you're going in. Because like I said, right now, we have them on the east side of the atolls. Come January, they're going to be on the west side of the atoll. So it's really quite important if you are doing guest house or resorts, just to do a bit of studying and just find out. It would be a shame to go all that way and then find out you're not in an atoll with whale sharks, for example, or less sharks if you really wanted to see those. So that's something I would just stress with the islands. Moving on to the liveaboards, again, many liveaboards in the Maldives, catering for different budgets and preferences. Typically year round, the trips are Mali to Mali, so you get picked up at the airport and dropped back at the airport, so it makes it kind of easy. The beauty, I would say, of the liveaboard is that you get to travel through multiple atolls. So on a central route, for example, you'll be able to go to the atoll where the mantas are, you'll be able to visit where the whale sharks are, you'll be able to visit the best dive for nurse sharks. So that's the beauty of the liveaboard. We can also tailor trips to specific marine life. So for example, do a more shark type trip. So if you went to the deep south, for example, and no matter what the season is, you can visit the highlight dives. So that's one of the main benefits, I would say. Generally more hardcore diving, I would say. So it is 3 dives a day minimum, sometimes 4 dives a day, and more challenging dives, I would say, because we do a lot more of the channels or the can-dos, which I'll come to later. And one interesting thing I think about the liveaboards in the Maldives is that we have a diving donny. So as you see in the small picture, or the boat in the picture, the liveaboard has a second boat next to it, which we call a diving donny. Donny basically means boat in Dhivehi, it's a Maldivian language. So basically what happens, the liveaboard becomes your hotel, and then the diving donny is your daily diving boat. So we keep the 2 separate, which is also pretty nice. I thought I'd just touch on a few points about the diving also, just to let you know. So the maximum depth in the Maldives is 30 meters, and the maximum dive time is 60 minutes. That's set by Maldivian law. The dive time sometimes is tricky when you're on a manta cleaning station, but yeah, we try to stick to it as much as we can. But the 30-meter one, yeah, that's a law we have to stick to. And it is recreational diving only. So if there are any tech divers out there, yeah, unfortunately, that's not allowed in the Maldives currently. Something to bear in mind with the Maldives would be the current. Okay, so lots of people confuse current, say, oh, I dived in current, but we don't do drift dives. The diving in the Maldives is very specific, points on the reef where we need to stay. So we use reef hooks to stay in a split point or a hot spot on the reef. So it's not jump and drift with the current. You jump, get to the split point, which sometimes means a little bit of work or even going against the current. So that's something just to bear in mind. Nitrox, I definitely recommend nitrox if you come to the Maldives, because the average depth of the dives is pretty deep. Most of the dives we're going to 25, maybe 30 meters. So if you're doing that 2, 3, or 4 times a day, then yeah, definitely nitrox is very much recommended. Water temperature, you can see there all year round, 28, 29 degrees. So yeah, shorty is normally plenty enough, unless you get a bit chilled, then maybe a 3 mil, but yeah, shouldn't need too much. And as I mentioned earlier, marine life specific dives. So this is the one thing with the Maldives. So we will go to a certain site, a cleaning station to see mantas. We'll go to a can-do or a channel to see sharks. We'll go to a Thila to say, maybe see a different type of shark. So it is very marine specific dives that we do during the trips. So yeah, I thought I would just explain a little bit about some of the dives. So I don't know if you've been to the Maldives, you would have sure seen some of these. If you haven't been, then I'll just give a brief explanation of some of the famous dives here in the Maldives. So can-do, this is something you will hear when you come to the Maldives. So can-do basically means channel. Okay, so we do a channel dive. So looking at the dive map there, at the bottom in the red, you've got entrance to the atoll. So what you've got there is that is the outside of the atoll where it says entrance to the atoll. And then you've got 2 reefs on either side. And then you've got this channel that comes into the atoll. So on an incoming current, so then water will be rushing and funneled through that channel. It means that currents can be quite strong there. But what happens is where the current hits that channel mouth, you get an upwelling. And so this attracts lots of small fish, which attracts bigger fish, which attracts sharks. And so we basically hook on in these channel mouths, staring out into the ocean and just watching sharks cruising up and down past us, eagle rays, schooling eagle rays, can see anything really. It's one of those dive sites. Can be a little bit adrenaline filled. So you dive, get down to 30 meters, hook on, stay there until you've got say 80 bar, or you've got 5 minutes no deco left, and then you unhook and then drift inside the channel. But once you've drifted inside the channel, so then the action stops. So basically the full action point is the front there, so the channel mouth. So it can be yeah, extremely exciting to see all the different sharks and yeah, anything else passing by. Then Thillas and Giris. So these are almost the same. So they're basically a pinnacle, is what I would call them. The difference being is a Thila, the definition for Thila in Maldivian is that the fact that a boat can drive over the top of a Thila without hitting it. Whereas a Giri, if you tried to drive over the top of a Giri, you crash the boat into it. So basically that's the difference between the two. But it also means that the dives are quite different. So because the Thila is slightly deeper, it is then more affected by current, so you still get the upwelling on the split point where that's hitting the Thila. So again, really good for sharks, really good for eagle rays, amazing for schooling fish. So one of my favorite things on the Thila is when you've got a bit of current, if you can hook in the up current, is watching the fusiliers. So in the bottom left picture you see the fusiliers with the shark there. So the fusiliers always school in the up current, and then what happens is you get giant trevally, tuna, dogtooth tuna or trevally, and they're just kind of cruising around, and then all of a sudden it goes absolutely crazy mental. Fusiliers flying everywhere, tunas and giant trevellies diving in, trying to catch them. It's just epic. And the sound of it is also just incredible. So that's one of my favorite things on the Thillas. But you can also explore them. Turtles, the blue line snappers, which I mentioned before, overhangs, great for octopus and moray eels. So the Thillas really, we have some highlight dives in the Maldives that are Thillas. Whereas the Giri, as I mentioned, is a much shallower top. This means the current doesn't really work in the same way. And generally the Giri dives are much more easy dives. So we'd go for a coral or a dive looking for macro, those sorts of things. So slightly less action on the Giri. Still can be amazing, but yeah, not really the same hunting or shark action as you would get on the Thila. So yeah, that was those. And then back to the cleaning stations. So as I mentioned, as previously on the video that you saw there, was the cleaning stations typically for mantas, but it's not only mantas that go to the cleaning stations to be cleaned. Sometimes you can see sharks on the cleaning stations being cleaned, different rays, all sorts of things that will come onto these cleaning stations. So in the map here, so right in the middle, that one sort of block formation, this is Mufushi. This is a large cleaning station that we visit. And what we'll do again, jump on the outside, depending on the current, we'll hook one side or the other of the cleaning station. Again, with current, it is a better dive because the mantas are negatively buoyant, so they need to swim to breathe. So what they can do if there's current, they can just hover on the cleaning station and get themselves cleaned. So it's much easier for them. But again, like I said, you can see other types of animals being cleaned there. And the manta rays here, if you do go, these belly shots that are shown in the manta pictures, these are basically a fingerprint of the manta. So there is an ID, a manta trust who ID the mantas, and they use these belly shots to identify them, see where they first found. Obviously, if you find a new one, you can name it. So that's also pretty cool. So if you do go, try and get some belly shots and see if you can get them into Manta Trust, and then they'll give you some background on where the manta was first seen or how old it might be, or you maybe get to name a manta, which is also pretty cool. And then lastly, so this is us in the Maldives. So we currently operate 5 liveaboards there. Give you just a small bit of information about them. So just going around, so Voyager top left, this is a 20 packs boat, and Leo top right, 24 packs boat. Down bottom left, Virgo 18 packs, and then the 2 larger ones there, bottom right, Serenity, and our newest one in the middle, Explorer. They're both 26 packs boats. We offer various itineraries in the Maldives, as I mentioned before, for specific marine life, so maybe deep south to see the tigers, or maybe a shark-tastic to do more and more channel dives to see lots of sharks, or the central route, which is also going to give you a little bit of everything. Offer free nitrox, offer a free glass of wine with dinner as well. And yeah, we try to provide professional service for you guys to visit the Maldives and see the highlights of what we can show you. So that's pretty much it for me, I think, Phil. So
back to you. Thank you very much, Bernie. That was absolutely fascinating. I'm sure everybody would agree. I must admit, I've never thought about the manta ray as being negatively buoyant. To me, they always seem perfectly buoyant, while I tend to flounder around. So it's kind of reassuring to think that they sometimes have issues as well. What I'd like to do, just to build on Bernie's excellent presentation, is just share my screen for a moment and give you a few more details and a bit of an idea of the trips in the Maldives and how it would fit together. So hopefully, if I can press the right buttons, and with a bit of luck, I think I need to switch the screens around, if I can remember how to do that. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. Yep. Bernie, could you see my screen?
Yeah, it's working. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so I guess the classic trip for the Maldives and to join one of the Emperor boats in the Maldives is the Best of Maldives Liveaboard. So this is generally a 7-night liveaboard. You get 3 meals a day and afternoon snacks. You get the glass of wine with dinner that Bernie mentioned. You have 6 days of diving, so up to 17 dives, lots of dives in there, complimentary nitrox. You have airport meet and transfers to take you to and from the boat. And with flights from the UK, rough guide for that would be a 9-day trip for around 2,595 per person. That varies quite a lot, of course. The different levels of boat and levels of comfort and luxury of the boats vary. The prices of the liveaboard vary at different times of year, and of course the flights are variable as well. But to give you a rough ballpark of what to expect for that kind of trip, you'll probably be looking about that kind of price. As Bernie mentioned, there are sometimes different itineraries at different times of year. So January to March, sometimes the boats head to the south. Depending on the itinerary, some domestic flights might be required, so that might add to the price. Later in the year, September, October, sometimes they head up towards the northern atolls because that's where some action is. So again, there can be some additional costs there with the flights, depending on the itinerary. But the classic itinerary is the Best of Maldives that goes from Male and comes back to Male and goes around those central atolls. So that's the classic trip. You can extend that if you want to as well. So we mentioned there, or Bernie mentioned about resorts. So you can do your 7-night liveaboard and then you can spend some time in resort. It's entirely up to you how long you decide to spend in resort. There's of course no limit. Occasionally the resorts, particularly at peak times, do have minimum night stays, but you can stay really as long as you like within reason. So if you did your 7-night liveaboard, we'd probably recommend doing the liveaboard first again and then relaxing in the resort afterwards, but it's entirely up to you. For this kind of trip, it'll be about 13 days in length and you can expect to pay around 3,045. Of course, you can pay a lot more than that depending on the resort you pick. If you splurge on a jacuzzi villa or a water villa, there's lots and lots of options to splurge in the Maldives. It's quite famous for that, but you don't have to spend an absolute fortune to have some time in the resort. And depending on the resort you pick, there may be options to do some more diving as well. You can also do some other things. So the Maldives combines very well with Sri Lanka if people want a longer trip. So you can do your diving liveaboard in the Maldives and then head over for maybe 5 nights or so in Sri Lanka to go and see some of the excellent wildlife there or the culture. So that makes a great combination as well. Just if you're interested in a trip, get in touch with us, speak to your travel consultant, and they will talk you through an itinerary. So we have a special offer for you tonight as well as a thank you for joining our evening. So it's exclusive for those people that have joined us on the call tonight. So if you book any new trip on an Emperor Baldy's liveaboard leaving in 2023, then you can save 10% on that. There are some terms and conditions attached to that, as there are with all offers. So our marketing team will be following up in this call, in this session, with more details of that offer. But we'd absolutely love you to book a liveaboard. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now, and hopefully I go back. So let's hand over to a bit of a Q&A. Just while people are having a chance to write some questions down, Bernie, I'll ask you, what's your personal favourite time of year in the Maldives?
I absolutely love February. That's my favorite time of year. So it's middle of the dry season. So that's one benefit. It's very good for sharks, and I like sharks. And also for the liveaboard side of things, there's quite a few boats go to the south. So if you do stay in the central area, it's actually a bit quieter than other times of the year. So for me, the central area in the middle of the dry season, I absolutely love it due to almost perfect conditions generally and less boats around, which helps.
Very good. Yeah, I'm sold. We've got a few questions coming in, so please do keep firing your questions in, and we'll answer as many as we possibly can, or as many as we have. So we have a question, Bernie, from an anonymous attendee, so we don't know their name, asking if there's any options for snorkelers. Not all of their family dive, but they'd like to snorkel as well. They're asking more about resort-based rather than liveaboard.
Yeah, so
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's lots of snorkeling options. I mean, one could be to time it with a full moon and go up to Hanifaru Bay, which is they get the manta aggregations up there. That could be one option. The liveaboards, I would say, we're more diving specific, so you can snorkel, but not every area is perfect for snorkeling. But certainly from the resorts, there's lots and lots of options with the shallow reefs around. So yeah, again,
I would add to that just to say that it's probably, or we would certainly recommend, to pick a resort with a good house reef, so that you can go. Some of the resorts have maybe they have no house reefs, especially some of the newer ones, or some of them have maybe only one entry and exit point, or it's a long distance actually out to the house reef. There's actually a small Zodiac ride. But some of the other resorts, they have quite a lot of entry and exit points around the island. So whether a diver or a snorkeler, really, if you're spending time in resort and you want to dive, then those islands are nicer ones to go to, so that you can really explore a range of options. We've got a question from Jonathan Crowther as well. Do you need to bring your own reef hook, Bernie?
No, we have them. So we have them on the boat. You can use them for free of charge for the week. So you can't take them home. You have to give them back. But yeah, you can use them free of charge on the boat. So no problem there.
Excellent. And we have another question. Are liveaboards only for hardcore divers, as you put it? I would say enthusiastic divers. They're a mixed family. Diving and snorkeling probably wouldn't want to do 3 to 4 dives a day. So I guess they're very welcome on the boat, and people don't have to do.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So if you tell us in the evening, don't wake me up in the morning because I want to sleep in, I want to skip the first dive, absolutely no problem. Or if the afternoon you think, no, I'm just going to read a book on the sun deck, absolutely no problem.
Okay, and another question from Jonathan, if I just skip ahead, are there any discounts for non-divers with Emperor liveaboards?
So the currently what you get is a £50 voucher to spend on board. So that's the difference.
Yeah, the issue, Jonathan, for the boats is that these are not huge cruise boats. They're quite small boats. So while somebody may not be diving, it's still a person on the boat taking up a space in the cabin. Yeah. So it's important from the boat point of view that they're able to fill as many spots as possible. So we've got a few other questions. Somebody asking, is Sri Lanka safe? Yes, it is. We won't focus too much on Sri Lanka here because we're here to talk about Maldives. But yes, you're absolutely safe to travel to Sri Lanka. No issues at all there. Bernie, when would you say is the best time to visit the Ra and Bar atolls? So for those that don't know, Ra and Bar are sort of heading north in the Maldives, but over slightly to the western side.
So Ra Atoll, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a best time. That's an atoll with lots of very good dive sites, beautiful dive sites. Bar Atoll, really the only time you want to be in Bar Atoll, in my opinion, is around full moon, and probably in towards the end of rain season, because what happens is, I don't know if you know Hanifaru Bay. It's basically a bay in the Maldives that gets manta aggregations, and it's normally a few days before and after full or new moon. And the bay is a protected area, so you have to pay to go inside there to snorkel with the mantas. But yeah, you can get huge aggregations. Sometimes you can get just one or two or none, but other times you can get lots and lots. So other than that, if it is for diving, I would say Bar Atoll is not my favorite in terms of that. So we would generally only send a boat there in and around full moon, because the mantas aggregate there. When it's not like the mantas purpose, yeah, it's really specific. Yeah.
And we've got a question again. We don't know who it's from, but I'm asking if the corals are in good condition. So as Bernie mentioned in the presentation, so there are nice corals in the Maldives. There's certainly nice soft corals. They're probably not the main draw. It's the larger marine life that is probably the main focus to visit. But there's still some absolutely beautiful corals. Would you agree, Bernie?
Yeah, I would say not. So not every dive site has beautiful corals. There was El Nino, there was the tsunami went through there as well. And because of the strong currents, that can also affect some of the shallow corals. But we certainly have some nice coral dive sites. But like you said, I think the soft corals would probably be more of the highlights. But in some areas, we're starting to get new growth corals coming back, which is really, really nice to see.
Good, that's good. Yeah, soft corals are my favorite. I love them. Yeah, so that's all good for me. Alex Lloyd is asking, how does it work for single divers? Single supplements, he said, particular sessions for groups of singles. So Alex, I can answer that one, and then Bernie can add to it if he wants to. So one of the great things about liveaboards is that they are fantastic for single divers as long as you are happy to share. So we have so many customers that are single divers that go on a liveaboard, and as long as you are happy to share a cabin, then you pay exactly the same costs as everybody else, and it allows you, compared to staying in a resort, it allows you to experience the diving in the Maldives for really a fraction of the price. Often, I think very good friendships are made while sharing a cabin on a liveaboard. There's same-sex sharing cabins, of course. If you want to have a single cabin to yourself, then there is a fairly significant supplement for that, simply because, again, there are not too many divers that are on these liveaboards. In a way, I don't think in the diving world we think of them that way, but they're really quite exclusive to have a boat for just sort of 20 or so people. So it actually makes quite a big difference if there's one person taking a cabin all to themselves. So there is a supplement to that. Would you agree, Bernie?
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
Super. Okay. We've got a couple of questions on the chat as well, so I shall just segue over to that. What is the flight time from London, asks Alan. So you have only one airline, Alan, that flies direct, and that is BA, and they only fly direct in what I would call the high season for non-divers in the Maldives, which is December to April. We have just as many clients go in the what's traditionally the wetter season, on the basis, well, you're going to get wet anyway, aren't you? So the diving's fantastic all through the year. So BA fly direct, and I think that flight's probably about 10 hours. The other options, there's a lot of options going via the Middle East. So you have with Emirates or Qatar, for example, and obviously you've got two flights there. You've got a stopover in the middle, so you may be looking at 13 hours. Typically, the schedules from the UK, you'd leave on the first day and you'd arrive in the morning of day 2 local time. Coming back, it's in your favour. So if the flight leaves in the morning, you can get back to the UK in the same evening. If the flight leaves later in the day, then you get back the following morning. It works very well, and it's pretty seamless, and it's pretty easy to do. Alan also asked, Bernie, this is one for you. do you or can you offer training on board, for example, a rescue course? I guess a rescue course might be a little bit difficult, but
Yeah.
an advanced course is quite common.
Yeah, so typically advanced and nitrox would be what we're teaching on board. A rescue course, you could do it, but actually you'd be missing a lot of the dives, so you wouldn't. It would kind of be a shame to miss the dives for doing that, and it's not really ideal for the liveaboard whilst it's moving all the time as well. So, yeah, more advanced and nitrox is what we focus on.
Yeah, but of course, Alan, you can join the liveaboard and then spend a bit of time in resort to do your rescue dive. A lot of the dive centres in resorts will be able to cater for that. Bernie, just a side question for that. So, if somebody is an open water diver already, can they do their join the boat and do their advanced on board and then enjoy the same itinerary that the other divers would once they're qualified?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. We have, I think, one more question, which is from Louise, which is, are all the pelagic species available to see all year round?
If you're lucky, yes. Yeah, so the mantas, as I mentioned, the reef mantas, they migrate within the Maldives, so they're there year round. It's just finding them. And the sharks, they're year round as well. So you can see sharks and mantas year round. You can see the whale shark year round as well. So
yeah, and that's actually one of the advantages of the liveaboards, as Bernie mentioned in the talk. So obviously, when you're on a liveaboard, you're very mobile. So the captains and the crew are in the water not quite 365 days a year, but they will know exactly at any one time where the marine life should be or where it's likely to be, and you're mobile enough to move around to the east side of the atoll or the west side of the atoll. Whereas when you're in resort, then yes, there are dive sites that they can reach, and some of the resorts can reach both sides of the atolls, but you're obviously a little bit more limited in terms of how far you can travel to find the best marine life. We got a question from Julio as well. Hi, Julio. Are there any liveaboards that are particularly camera friendly? So out of the Emperor fleet of boats, if somebody's got a big camera, is there one boat that's maybe better than the others?
I would say the bigger boats. We've got bigger charging stations on. I mean, it can depend how many people turn up with cameras. Some weeks we get a few people with GoPros. Next week we've got 10 DSLRs. So it can vary a little bit. But I would say the charging stations on Explorer, Serenity, they would be more substantial. So possibly also the diving donies are much bigger, so have bigger areas to store the cameras whilst you're moving to and from the dive site. So yeah, I would suggest the bigger boats would be
okay. But all of the Emperor boats are able to cater for photographers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have rinse buckets on all the donies. We have charging stations on all the boats. So yeah, we can cater on all. But yeah, maybe more space on the bigger ones. Wonderful.
And we have, I think, one last question, which is from Darren Pickering, which is, do you cater for rebreathers? So we've mentioned that the diving's recreational only, but I guess some rebreathers, they're happy to follow the recreational profile, but with their rebreather.
Yes, so we get occasional rebreather divers. So we can provide softener lines. Softener line. Sorry, you can buy it in 20 kg tubs. We can provide oxygen with a booster pump, and we have bailout tanks, S40s, and we also have 3 litre rebreather tanks as well. So all is available. You just need to pre-book those things, so we make sure everything's set up for when you arrive.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And one last question from me, Bernie. Obviously you go to and from the Maldives constantly. Any top tips for people traveling to the Maldives?
Top tips for people traveling to the Maldives? Good question. It's a long way, so I would suggest with some of your options of doing Sri Lanka or extending, I think that's definitely a great option, or doing back-to-back on the liveaboards, because like you say, it can be a 12 or 14-hour flight if you're stopping over. So yeah, I think extending whilst you're there. Research before you come, so you are aware of what you're coming into. And then, yeah, what else could I say about the Maldives?
Yeah. Well, a top tip from me to everybody, really, not just for the Maldives, but for every destination, I think, is to go there and enjoy nature as you find it. I think you know, while somewhere like the Maldives is particularly famous, particularly for the bigger animals, then you may see them or you may not, and that's down to nature. So go there with the view that any big animals are a bonus, and enjoy the beautiful dive sites and nature as you find it. And I'm sure you will have a wonderful trip. And of course, travel with a smile on your face. It's always the best way. Wonderful. I think that probably brings us to the end of the evening. So thank you very much to Bernie for joining us this evening and being our expert. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much to everybody that's joined the evening. Just as a reminder, if I share my screen again momentarily, I just have to switch it around again. We're back to the beginning. So we have that exclusive offer for those joining the call on Emperor liveaboards for travel in 2023. So please do get in touch and benefit from that offer as a thank you for joining this call. And if you've enjoyed this evening, then please do join our next event, which is on the 14th of November with scuba editor Simon Rogerson, where we will be heading to the Philippines and discovering the wonderful island of Bohol and some of the diving there. So that's it from us. Once again, Bernie, thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody, thank you very much for joining. I hope that was an interesting presentation and whet your appetite. Oh, Monica says, will we do something similar for Indonesia? We will do our best, Monica. We tend to do these sessions through the winter, so there will be a few more dates announced once we get things organized, and we love talking about Indonesia as well. Emperor have got some great itineraries in Indonesia too, so we will do our best to put on something for Indonesia as well. All right, I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you very much for joining us, and maybe we will see you next week as well, or hear from you about a trip to the Maldives in the coming days. Have a lovely evening. Thank you and good night.